Star Trek, the ultimate franchise. These are the voyages of 3 veteran Trekkies, Rich, Ian, and Toby. Their ongoing mission? To explore the vast Star Trek universe, to seek out new perspectives and fresh debates, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. Beyond the Final Frontier.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Final Frontier, a Star Trek podcast with me, your host, Rich Matthews, and my fellow Trekkies, Trek-spurts, fans more than experts, we know we're human, is Mr. Ian Spelling.
Hello, everybody.
And Mr. Toby Weidman.
Hello.
So today we're going to be exploring our favourite time travel episodes. As ever, this is our favourites, not necessarily the best, although we have noticed a trend where those two things converge a bit. When we get near the tippy top, we can't help ourselves and our critical brains can't quite allow our hearts to rule the roost all the time. So, without further ado, I will kick off.
I'd just like to say on this point, time travel shows up in Star Trek quite a lot.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hadn't realised quite how much it was, but I mean, it's setting aside whole seasons, like season 2 of Picard and season 3 of Discovery onwards, and the 2 films, Voyage Home, First Contact, it's, quite an important trope that is...
It's very hard to do honourable mentions, because the list is massive.
And not just like time travel, but things that involve time as well, and playing with time. There are certainly episodes that we've discussed in detail that I have not selected. So things like, I think episodes like City on the Edge of Forever is an obvious classic time travel one, but we discussed that in depth. So I've not
doesn't mean it doesn't
that.
belong. If it
No, absolutely. But I kind of wanted to pick stuff that we hadn't really talked about, because I thought that might be more interesting for our listeners.
We do rotate on that issue, I've noticed.
Yeah.
Any given episode, one of us decides to do that.
But like, for instance, Trials and Tribulations would be my number one because it's one of my favourite episodes. But I decided deliberately not to pick that one.
Interesting. Well, on this occasion, I'm following Ian's lead more again, which is it is what it is, and sometimes you just got to accept that these great episodes are great episodes for a reason. But having said that, I think the way that what you've just said expresses itself in mine, Tobes, is the first half of the list. After that, I can't help myself. I'm like, well, it would just be a bit of an injustice to leave certain things out as you get to the tip of the ziggurat.
I agree, and the episodes that I've picked are all ones that I like. I haven't picked anything that when we did our holiday episodes, we were sort of having to lean into things that we wouldn't necessarily recommend. But in this case, I have picked episodes that I do enjoy. So it's not like I've thrown it out completely. But yeah, I just decided to leave certain ones out.
Well, and so acknowledging that conversation, my number 7 is Tomorrow and Tomorrow
Good
and
segue.
Tomorrow. Yeah, thank you very much. One day we'll get paid for this. Probably not.
Latinum. We'll get Latinum.
Latinum, yeah. Gold-pressed polystyrene Latinum. Yeah, so Tomorrow, Strange New World, Season 2, Episode 3, I think it is, which I didn't like when I first watched it, actually. And then, oddly, it's been one of the ones with Strange New Worlds I've gone back and watched a few times. Partly because I'm preoccupied with the fact they've got La'an related to Khan, and then you obviously how do they not realise who Khan is? And Space Seed and that sort of, reverse canon tinkering that can go on. But overall, it's a really nice episode. She's really good. The more we see of Christina Chong as La'an, the better she is. She's really, really brilliant.
I agree.
And this is actually the one time I do quite like Paul Wesley's Kirk, perhaps because they know it's an alternate or going to be an alternate. So it's a little bit more playful than it is elsewhere. And I also like things like the callback to the Voyager interface that the temporal investigation team use, which was nice to see that come back as well. And that's one of the nice sort of Easter eggs in there. And primarily, it's a classic sort of. I know some fans online have compared it to City on the Edge of Forever, but there's a more obvious new Trek version of that with Discovery. But it is a nice grandfather paradox, and the reality of what happens if you kill baby Hitler and exploring it through that. And rather than dodging the Khan of it, I respect the fact that they did make it central to an episode and acknowledge the character is based in that, and then sort of left it. And that's what I think why I didn't like it initially. I think, they've just left it now and they've reset, but they haven't. They just sort of addressed it and ultimately allowed the character to expand beyond that a bit more. So I also I'm amused by the shifting of the timeline Terminator style of the eugenics wars because of the temporal Cold War, and that sort of nudging it further away down the line, which always strikes me as quite a funny thing when someone picks a date in the future for any form of apocalypse or world-changing war. But yeah, so overall, fun episode. Interesting, great for Christina Chong, and satisfying, as we've acknowledged before. Strange New World Season 2 is pretty much currently the watermark for the current incarnation of Trek.
The thing I think I like about that episode is it blends action with some emotional heart. And I think one of the criticisms of New Trek is they either lean into one or the other, perhaps overly so. But here I think they actually managed to do both really well. And it gives Lan's character some real depth, which I really warmed to her character. I wasn't overly interested in her, but in the first season, but I think in the second season she really came into her own. I'm way more interested in her story.
Is that one of your top 7?
It's not, no.
Okay.
But I did like that episode a lot.
Yeah, same. It's not in mine. We are addressing favorites here, not just the best. So I'm going to do something unusual for us and show some love to Discovery. And I had a tough choice here because there's 2, but one was an episode and one was a moment. So I'm going to go with the episode over the moment, but I'm going to mention the moment first, which is the scene with the 900-year-old tree in People of Earth. It worked. It was a very nice moment. It got all the characters together. It was very touching. It addressed what had been accomplished and what was left behind, no pun intended, and took Star Trek deep into the future, which I think did open up the show in ways that it was intended to do. It kind of freed them from a lot of post-canon and gave us better visuals, and not better, but different visuals and new weapons and all sorts of stuff. So I very much like that.
What season was this, Ian?
It was when they shifted into the next timeline.
So season
3. I haven't seen this episode.
My choice for 7 is Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad.
Okay, yeah.
Okay? It's fun, it's funny, it's smart, it's good science fiction, and it's got a wonderful scenery-chewing performance by Rainn Wilson as Harry Mudd. I just really, really enjoy that episode. When I think of Discovery and which episodes I like, it's really one of the first ones that pops into mind as well. It's visually interesting. It's, like I said, it's very funny. Rainn Wilson plays it on the edge of over the top and mean.
Jason Isaacs very good at dying, it turns out.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting dichotomy. A little bit of trivia. The episode was directed by a guy named David Barrett. David Barrett's father is Stan Barrett. Stan Barrett is still alive, and he was a stuntman actor who played the jailer in All Our Yesterdays on the original series.
It's a small Star Trek world, isn't it?
Right? Talk about a time jump, right? So it literally is a thread that connects, 50-something years earlier, which I always thought was very cool.
That falls for me in the optimistic period of Discovery is how I would describe it. And it is fun. And Rainn Wilson is a good recast for Harry Mudd.
It's his second episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, that's mine.
My 7th pick, we're going right back to the original series with Season 1's Tomorrow is Yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first proper instance of time travel in Star Trek, although there is a little bit of a time jump in the Naked Time earlier on in the season, but this is one where they actually go back a lot further to late 1960s America. Again, I picked it because it's just a fun episode. It's got a lot of stuff in it. It's kind of exciting. There's a lot of action, from the moment that Captain John Christopher is beamed aboard after Scotty accidentally disintegrates his fighter craft. And then it does have a moral dilemma in it as well about whether they can return him to Earth without messing with the timeline. It's interesting how Kirk sort of doesn't follow the Prime Directive at all. He just sort of shows him around the ship almost straight away and takes him aboard.
Early days.
Yeah, up to the bridge where he meets the little green man of Spock.
Look at all of our wonderful technology.
Yeah.
It's very 60s in its colours, isn't it?
I particularly like the fact that the inciting incident that transports them back to the 1960s is just all summarised in the captain's log. It's not shown at all. He just says, "Yeah, we got caught in a black hole thingy, and it sent us back here."
Black hole thingy, I think, is probably what the writer's room called
That's
it.
exactly the phrasing they use.
Sounds like they're writing for Stranger Things.
But it also introduced the slingshot around the sun.
Yeah.
The concept.
Well, I was going to say there's a lot of parallels with Voyage Home in general.
But they also use that in Assignment Earth as well. That's how they travel back through that. But yeah, famously.
But it's that retrieval of something. It's the need. The thing that reminds me of Voyage Home is the need to retrieve something to protect, to sort of, whereas it's the evidence, isn't it, in Tomorrow's Yesterday, whereas it becomes the seeking the energy to rebuild the dilithium crystal. The crystalline crystal.
That's a whale of an analogy, yes.
Indeed.
But there's a nice parallel with Little Green Men from Deep Space Nine, where Kirk is being interrogated and he's sort of just doing quippy one-liners as a response. Although what he's saying is sort of true in that he just popped into existence when they're saying, "How did you get into the base?" And then there's the interrogation scene in Little Green Men as well. So yeah, that's my 7.
And real quick, since people at home can't see us on our little screens here, People of Earth, we were like this, 333. It is episode 3. We were waving our hands going 333, but I don't think anybody ever said it out loud. People of Earth, Discovery Season 3.
Okay, so my number 6 is Timeless from Voyager, for a variety of reasons, not least because Voyager sort of played with time. You know what you're saying, Toby, more than it did a lot of time travel as such, although obviously Endgame is a big time travel one, but Endgame is not on this list. So I found myself, when I'm thinking about what do I like in a time travel episode, sometimes it is as simple as how they solve the problem, how they want to address it in a novel way, and I always liked the use of the 7 of 9's inbuilt tech to communicate and send the message back. Sorry, should say the episode is about Harry, Kim, and Chakotay living guilt-ridden with Harry having accidentally twatted the Voyager and killed everyone, and so years later trying to reverse it by causing unusually a temporal anomaly, which is a nice nod to all good things, to reverse it and save everyone on the Voyager. And of course you have the novelty of Captain Geordie LaForge captaining the USS Challenger and trying to stop them from violating the temporal prime directive, which it doesn't. Geordie's role in that sort of thing never comes up again, does it? It's sort of not really. He's jumped straight to Commodore by the time we get to Picard season 3. But yeah, it's a fun. It's interesting. It's quite moving. It does. I know that Brannon Braga. Well, Garrett Wang has said that Brannon Braga did say it was his attempt at Voyager's City on the Edge of Forever, and it isn't that good. But it has that same sort of melancholic motivation, which was then sort of weaponized for Endgame. It's like Timeless was sort of the warm-up for when, as you like to say, when Janeway becomes a mean son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And just throws caution to the wind and sets out to completely change the timeline. So yeah, Timeless.
That's a good episode, though. I hadn't thought about that one, actually.
It's my number 6.
There we go.
There you go.
For all the reasons you said, it's actually got a cool concept that's a little fresh and a little throwback to what we've seen before. And I actually thought it was probably the best of the episodes of Star Trek that LeVar Burton also directed.
Well, that's true. Yeah, I forgot to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he did a fine job behind the camera.
Directs himself very well.
Yeah, and yes, I'm glad he listened to his director. Yeah, it's a very solid episode unto itself. It works as kind of a celebration episode type as well, and the crossover and all of it. It really has a lot going for it. I remember watching that at the time and thinking, this is good Star Trek. This is good science fiction.
Yeah.
This is good bridging the generations, so to speak. Solid episode, still holds up.
Yeah, I agree. And you could pick something like Year of Hell if you really wanted to, but it doesn't quite feel like it fits the bill somehow for me. It's in my long list. But this is...
Mine is it's a little higher up on mine.
Oh, there you go. So for me, because it felt less about that, whereas this is... For me, this was the best Voyager time episode.
See, I have a Voyager episode, but it's... I won't mention it until I get to it, but yeah.
So, Toby, what's yours then?
My sixth spot. So, as Ian gave Discovery some love, I'm going to give Enterprise some love, and I've picked the 2-part episode, season 4, Stormfront. Again, I think it sort of ticks a lot of boxes for me. It's kind of it maybe not top tier Enterprise, but it's still a very enjoyable episode. I think maybe I prefer Twilight if we're taking this theme, but this
that's because you like the vampires.
Well, I think in terms of a what if timeline, this one's very fun, and it, you have New York gangsters fighting Nazis, so it's combining two recognizable elements from the original series and piece of the action and patterns of force.
I was on the set of that episode. It was very cool.
Yeah.
Shot at Universal.
What the backlot?
Backlot at Universal's where they did all that stuff. I
mean, the vampire-looking aliens are kind of cool. They are sort of knockoff Remans a little bit. But you also have Silic and at the end of his character, although I do believe it's sort of a bit of a wasted moment when he dies. But you also have a really gnarly-looking Agent Daniels. The makeup work on that is fantastic. And I think that's the last time you see him until Discovery.
Until he's become David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
Talk about disfigurement. Jesus Christ.
Wow. It's like, okay. It's more the vocal change than anything else. What happened to your vocal cords?
They became Canadian. Come on.
But I think one of the things that this is sort of Manny Koto stamping his...
Respect his authority.
Well, his desire to move away from like the temporal Cold War, because it's kind of all just finished, and it's like, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to do, maybe a little bit more episodic stuff, although they were 2 and 3-parters. But I think the temporal Cold War kind of maybe limited the series in terms of its storytelling, and this is him saying, we're done with this now. We're gonna move on and send the ship and the crew off in new and exciting directions, which I think they did.
Interesting, because my number 5 is Twilight.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I did prefer this as a kind of, if we're talking time, but I just think I like the what if aspect of Stormfront.
Yeah, I love the device, the MacGuffin in Twilight. It was one of those times when, as I said, I should really go back and rewatch Enterprise wholesale. I think I would definitely, in the current context, do for reassessment by me. But Twilight was one of the ones when I watched it, when it aired, was like, oh no, this is good. This is really good. Also because you sort of watch it and you think, oh God, this is going to be they've got to time travel, but how? And then that's the idea of the parasite sort of existing out of space-time, and it sort of nods to Time's Arrow and other things they've played with, but making it an actual biological entity that they can then, if they cure it, it's going to have a knock-on and change the timeline. That's just really nice, and it's very satisfying as a storytelling device within the Star Trek thing. And again, one of the things we have to acknowledge is, as you say, that there's so much of it, endless innovation and ingenuity across all series of Star Trek in using time. And that just goes from being fun, like Star Trek 4 being a prime example, through to these sort of things where it's very carefully, it allows what if without it feeling like it's an alternate reality multiverse thing, because it is and it isn't. They never really say that, but nonetheless it feels pleasing to them be able, the way they take you back, the way they solve it. And it's one of the few times where once Archer is cured by Phlox and that it's a proper reset, and that does make sense because that's not always been the case.
We've spoken about this before. We're both critics of the reset button.
Yes, normally, yes, absolutely.
Then she woke up kind of aspect of things.
Star Trek's version is a reset, and only I remember what happened.
Yeah.
That's what Star Trek does. Worf's done it. Picard, lots of people go, I'm the only one with any memory of this adventure. So it's not my brain, it's not psychosis. It actually happened.
But in this episode, in Twilight, the reset button is the way they do it, as you said, is actually quite well thought out and works within the context of the storytelling.
And it's satisfying. That's unusual. So that alone is one of the reasons it's stuck in my brain, and there's always been an episode I really like. And when I think about time travel across Star Trek, I do come back to this one.
Although we should say that the Vulcan scientists scientific directorate doesn't recognise time travel.
Well, yeah. Ian?
Number 5, Year of Hell, 1 and 2.
Hey, there we go. Well, it is great. It is great.
It is a great episode, yeah.
It's a great episode. It's arguably the best two-parter, any two-parter. It's up there, I would say. And it's certainly in the top 3 of any Voyager episodes. It's just really good filmic television, honestly speaking. It's just smart and well acted, and who we're so used to seeing Red being a jerk, right?
Yeah,
that it was fascinating to see him come in and play such an interesting character in Anoraks. I thought he was great. Just really well done. I actually had it tied with Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, but Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow ultimately didn't make my list.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
It's one of those ones where, like, all right, well, do I put that at 6? Do I put that at 4? And then I'm like, you know what? We're playing favorites, not best here. And so I actually eliminated that one from my list. But I just thought Year of Hell delivered everything it set out to do, and that it was one of my favorite actors to see, Kurtwood Smith come in and kill it in a guest spot was great, because I remember him from RoboCop.
Yeah.
And, he's a really solid actor.
I was always ashamed that they didn't make him spitting blood on the counter and going, give me my fucking phone call. Here's I'll be back.
Right.
Should be done in everything.
No. Surely it's bitches leave.
Right.
No, this logic could be, you burnt the fucking money!
or dumbass.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
that was a bit too cozy, isn't it, really?
But, no, yeah, I mean,
But what's good about that is Anoraks is actually a really layered character.
It is.
Yeah. Tobes.
My fifth spot, again, I'm going to give a series that we don't mention that very often. The animated series, and it's the episode Yesteryear.
Yeah, that's in my long list.
I mentioned that I haven't selected City on the Edge of Forever, so I decided to go with another Guardian episode. I know Ian really likes this episode. It's easily the best episode of the animated series. What I like about it adds a Vulcan lore, it adds some Spock lore, and it's got an emotional impact. It's actually quite an emotional episode, something that was mostly lacking in the animated series because they sort of lent in more to sort of action type things.
Once that filmation style didn't ever really support emotion, certainly.
And the fact that they do this in a very short running time, it's much shorter. I think this would have made a really fantastic live action episode, actually, where they could have fleshed it out a little bit more.
Should have saved it for phase 2, then next year.
Yeah, don't know. Because it's Spock and being a favourite character of mine and learning a little bit more about his youth. The only thing I would say is I do find the voice of young Spock a little grating. That's a criticism, but other than that, I really like this episode.
Brilliant. So we're into I had to, this is just the favourites purely now. So there will be episode repetition, but hopefully we can still bring new and interesting comments. And I'm going to focus on the time travel as such. So reflecting on the fact earlier I said how that sometimes it's just for fun. So this is my number 4 is Trials and Tribulations. It's almost like the captain's log. We were caught in a temporal thingamy.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, we used the time orb just as Darwin did. Now we're back. And I kind of like that because it suits the tone of the episode. And it's just a great meshing, acknowledging Star Trek's own changes and its progression and development. And as I've said previously, one of my favorite jokes in Star Trek, which is the Worf saying that we don't talk to outsiders about why we look like that. It creates its own, and they don't really have this anywhere else in Star Trek. There are attempts to do it, but nowhere else does it as well. It creates its own little meta loop with Trouble with Tribbles. Meaning, you watch one, you want to watch the other. You watch that, you want to watch it, and they both add to each other in a way which is unexpectedly keeps giving. And so it's like its own little time travel causal loop within the series itself.
Some would say Space Seed and Wrath of Khan, but go on.
No, but that's slightly different because there's no actual time travel in that, if you see what I mean. That does inform the sequel episode, but this is the fact that nothing in Wrath of Khan is directly in a scene in Space Seed, whereas in Trials and Tribulations, and I think we said when we talked about it last, was when you watch The Trouble with Tribbles and Kirk is in the pile of tribbles and they're still dropping. In your head now, if you've seen Trials and Tribulations, you've got Dax and Cisco scanning and lobbing up there, and it adds an extra layer to it. Which reminds me of Back to the Future 2, and that sort of stacking up of causal this and that. And in fact, so when you do, I quite like Back to the Future too. So when you're watching the first one now, in your head you see Marty crawling over the lighting space on the lighting rig in the Enchantment Under the Sea scene. It's a bit like that, and it's a very satisfying. It's great Star Trek because it is throwaway and done for fun, but that doesn't mean it's not rigorous and clever and sophisticated and advances all characters within it. So there you go. Well,
I mean, yeah, I mentioned this would be my number one if I wasn't ruling certain episodes out. I love this episode as discussed many times.
Number 4, All Good Things.
Yeah.
It's my number 3.
If it was quality, it would probably be higher. As a favorite, it's at 4 for me.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it in context of Picard as well. I thought All Good Things was everything Picard should have been in its own way.
Vineyards, though. At least there are vineyards.
The vineyards. But just to see the way they aged Picard versus what Patrick Stewart ended up looking like all those years later was interesting to me.
They should have made him grow a beard. Don't you think they should have made him grow a beard?
They should have made it grow a beard, yes.
At least in the first episode, and then shave it off until he goes to Starfleet. When he goes back to
Starfleet, yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought too. But that was a finale that delivered. We've discussed finales. That was one that delivered everything that it was supposed to. And then within that, you had unbelievable time hopping, all the anomalies and everything that goes on in this episode. It's fun. Like, you almost need to be a scientist to follow it and to argue the logic of whether or not all of that stuff actually makes sense. But even if you just have a little difficulty following it, it's fun, entertaining, thought-provoking science fiction unto itself. Well handled, well edited. If you want to watch a masterclass in editing of Star Trek, Frame of Mind is one, and this one is another. This one is actually far more leisurely in its editing, in the sense of it had a longer story to tell, and so they didn't have to smash cut everything. But this one is put together beautifully.
The cuts between the timelines, where it switches and like how the conversation sort of carries on, is great.
Right. I completely agree with you. I think it's the most cinematic execution in TV Star Trek because of that, which is that extra room to allow it to accelerate. And that feels very cinematic in the sense that the technique is being used to tell the story as much as anything else. And TV doesn't often allow that.
And it's not rushed, which is what I like. It's not boring, but it's not rushed. And there's a difference.
It also has, as we've already, my soapbox in Star Trek is that when it's really good, it has a big idea, capital B, capital I. And this is one of the best ones. In that the test isn't just Picard himself, it's showing the strength of the crew and how you use them in different timelines, and there's consistency across people's talents, skills, and that's why it's so heartwarming. It isn't just the poker game at the end, it's the fact across timelines you see this continuity of character and intent and reliability. That is,
and friendship.
And friendship, yeah, exactly. And it is that thing we've said before, which is that's what you should be able to rely on any Star Trek crew to support you emotionally, but also competently in action. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what Picard does. And that's what makes it such a beautiful end to Next Generation.
There's also a lot of loyalty involved in the episode, which is a step beyond friendship.
Which then they play off a bit in Picard.
Yeah.
A bit much, but
My 4th spot is also a Next Gen episode. It also has an important poker scene as a narrative device. Now, this is where I might come into a bit of criticism.
It's cause and effect.
Because it's cause and effect, yeah. So, is it a time travel episode? It's probably more a time loop episode, or a temporal causality loop.
Well, it's not on my list for that reason.
But there is a time travel aspect to it in that they keep going back and repeating the same events again and again, and you've got the appearance of the USS Bozeman and Fraser, Captain Fraser at the end. I do think this has probably the best, or at least one of the best, cold openings of any Star Trek episode where it's the complete destruction of the Enterprise D.
Abandoned ship!
It's really shocking and unexpected when you first see it. It was like, what the heck is going on,
Yeah.
I really like that. I think it's impressive that the story never becomes boring to me, despite its repetitive nature. I think that there are enough changes within it and those feelings of deja vu that they have to kind of work through and work out, that it does feel new each time.
It's deja vu all over again.
I don't have much more to say about this episode. It's just, I think it's a fun time-related episode.
Yeah, it's one of my top Next Gen episodes. I always, in the same sense, when you think about someone mentions something and you sort of certain episodes always run through your mind, don't they? That's one of them for that reason, because it does typify the cleverness of it. But equally, though, I think probably sometimes I got a bit fatigued, I think, with Data solves the problem episodes of Next Gen, and it's the only thing which retrospectively slightly mars it, is that it's one of those. But it's appropriate. But it's like, I feel like there should be like some sort of checks and balance sheet for times Data saved the ship on his own, times Data almost killed everyone on his own. And it's
you could throw the same criticism at various other, like 7 of 9 or Spock.
Yeah, I think that would be
smart
true.
Characters do tend to be the ones who...
Wesley.
Well, Wesley.
Throwing it out there.
We need to do an episode on Wesley Crusher.
I agree. I like Wesley. You know this. I never really had such a problem with him. Maybe we should try and get Will Wheaton to come and talk to us about his favourite Wesley episodes. That would be fun.
Only if he wears that grey top with the stripes on it.
You can buy those now.
I know. I bet you can.
Oh, you could 10 years ago. Yes.
Yeah, I think if that ever happens, we should all wear them.
I had one. I had the sweatshirt. It was a sweatshirt they made. Actually, a hoodie.
Good episode, and I completely agree. And as I said, my number 3 is All Good Things, which, as you say, is actually an interesting sort of companion piece to Cause and Effect. I think the things that Ian was saying about All Good Things is the difference. It's like Cause and Effect with more character and time and emotion, and a little bit more of a realised conceit, an idea.
All Good Things would have been on my list. It's one of those ones that I ruled out.
No, it's just I can't think of Star Trek without thinking about All Good Things. And yes,
the thing is, if I'd done this list in terms of like my favourites, it would have all been episodes that we've talked about before. It really would. So it would have been Year of Hell. It would have been City on the Edge of Forever. It would have been All Good Things. It would have been Trials and Tribulations. I thought that would be boring, not just for our listeners, but for me as well.
I feel very boring now.
Well, then you should look at my list.
Yeah, I was going to say, you want to watch the rest of my list?
Sorry about that.
And this is the guy who chose Wrath of Khan as his big tearjerker moment.
Well, I mean, it is.
On that note, my third, All Good Things, talked about a lot. Ian, your third is which classic episode we've talked about a lot?
Yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah!
For all the reasons we've discussed multiple times before. Although
another really well-edited episode.
Yes.
Yes. But also really well written, really well acted, contained some huge surprises at the time for fans, right? How great was it to see Denise Crosby again? Now it's considered a classic, obviously, but when she came back, people were blown away that A, she did, that B, it was kind of, her idea. All of that was keyed into this. That Eric Stillwell was one of the writers on it was always an interesting story. It's a great episode with great behind-the-scenes stories as well. So just from the context of time passing, it's really interesting to me still, all these years later, to do little research on that episode and check out how scenes were done and why and what was cut. And then, like I said, the episode itself still stands tall. In my view, the only thing I feel bad when we do these lists is what else can we say about some of these episodes? Because we've addressed how much we like them, respect them.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a little spreadsheet of
how many times we've mentioned.
Yeah, and I'm going to drop a little list of episodes which we'll call the givens, where whenever we discuss a theme, if any of them fall and go, of course, there are these episodes which we will naturally include, because I think we might need to formalise. I think Toby's right, but we've all done this at different points as well, which is sometimes feeling like we need to do episodes which might not have been spoken about. So I will have a noodle behind the scenes and see.
That's a Sophie's choice, though, because honestly, some of the episodes deserve to be top of the list. So what? We've talked about them before.
Yeah,
yes, it gets repetitive, but best is best for a reason. But it's interesting because my number 1 is not the best episode, but it's my favorite. It happens to be one of the ones we've mentioned, an obvious choice. I didn't think it was an obvious choice. when I picked it, I said nobody else is going to have this at number one. You're right.
Look, I've accepted my lot. In fact, I thought that Timeless was going to be my one that no one else picked. So, what are you going to do?
All right, so what are we up
My
to?
number one was actually a genuine surprise for me.
So we're up to Toby's number 3.
Toby's
My number 3, I went Deep Space Nine, season 6. It's called Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night.
Good episode.
It also uses the cheat of the orb of time to kind of like explore. So like in terms of that aspect, I think you can criticize it, but it's a genuinely good story tackling something that they hadn't really covered before in terms of what is collaboration, what is a collaborator. For those who haven't seen it, Kira goes back in time to meet her mother because Gold the Cat basically incites her by saying that he was her mother's lover back on Terek Nor when Deep Space Nine was Terek Nor, and so she goes back to find out what the truth is. I like the fact that they don't really sort of conclude it. The story's told, but you don't really get how Kira's feeling it. She says that she hates her mother, but she saves her, and she says after all it is her mother, but she also really, really resents the choices that her mother made. But then her mother making those choices maybe saved her life, in that they were taken out of the camps and they were well fed. So there's an interesting loop in there as well.
It also makes Ducat's ongoing flirtation with Kira so good.
Yeah, absolutely. But
he literally
does,
and figuratively is a motherfucker.
Yeah.
He does this thing in this episode where he starts flirting, and Kira is entertaining another Cardassian sitting on his lap, and that Cardassian says the line that Ducat uses to kind of like point out that he's not a normal Cardassian and he's actually a nice guy kind of thing. And so it's like he has done this before, time and time again. And if anything, it just makes Ducat like he's a great villain. He really is. You really hate him.
Yeah. Super slimy.
Yeah.
And the episode title, just if you're interested, comes from a Percy Shelley lyrical play called Prometheus Unbound. Something else that is really good at it is that we're in season 6 of Deep Space Nine. You would have thought that we'd covered everything that you could about Kira's character, and then they throw this at us.
Yeah, that's
in
true.
terms of her role as a resistance fighter. Or
Which certainly a better
terrorist,
development than making Bashir a genetically engineered superdog. Which is, But interesting you mentioned the Shelley, because of course Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is subtitled The Modern Prometheus. Interesting. That's I don't know the timeline though. I can't remember which one came first.
The chicken.
Yeah, thank you. Today's high arc discussion on Beyond the Final Frontier. Okay, so number 2, just to keep things interesting, is City on the Edge of Forever.
We haven't discussed this one before, have we?
No, I'm surprised it's never come up.
The episode everybody overlooks.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's not like it's written by a renowned science fiction writer. It's not like it's a franchise-defining moment. It's not like it has franchise best performances by some of the most beloved characters. No one cares about this.
What's surprising is it's in your second spot.
Yeah,
After everything you've just said.
Well, no, I mean, my first spot is, as Ian said, it's my favourite time travel episode. City on the Edge of Forever. I mean, I've said it before. I struggle. I still have less affection for the original series, but in some ways, episodes like this just stand beyond that. If you see what I mean. So even though the special effects to make the Guardian aren't great by modern standards, it's still visually an incredibly interesting idea, and it's a very, I would probably say, in reality, mundane science fiction device in terms of there being a portal, and it's celestial, and it's higher life form, and it's not the most interesting time travel MacGuffin for sure, but this is the template. Yeah, I mean, you've got other...
They never explain how they get back, though.
Oh, well, that's the thing. It is interesting because when you're mentioning in tomorrow's essay with the whole, we got having to get caught, and here we are. It's kind of like this is somebody was on the other side, and somehow they did it like Poltergeist. They tied some tennis balls onto some string and threw it in, and then they were pulled back covered in slime. No, that's a plot hole. You have to hate the episode for it to be undermine the overall brilliance of it, wouldn't you? So what Next Gen does brilliantly in something like All Good Things is it takes the high-minded approach of something like City on the Edge of Forever in the original series and the more entertaining pseudo-scientific version of something like Is Tomorrow's Yesterday, and it it's very good at combining those two things in its later incarnation. And it's very hard to not measure everything that has them going back and having a meaningful historical encounter to this, because the stakes and this is a big pitch, isn't it? A big swing at the time. The fact that it did work so well and is so entertaining and so moving, and it resonates throughout Star Trek as a result. They should leave it alone. Well, I don't really want to see any more. As much as I like these old scientists, or was it Terra? What's the one in Discovery, Ian, that they use the Guardian?
I'm blanking on the title, but I
Terra Prime or something, or is that's Enterprise? It's something like that. So there should be a moratorium now on the Guardian. Leave it alone. But I understand why, because it is such an iconic moment and episode, and a beautiful and complete exploration of the impact of changing time.
It's an easy device for doing it, time travel. So it's like the Orbit Time, And
the Orb of Time is very much it's very much like that. But at least the Orb of Time is linked to non-linear entities in the wormhole instead of the Guardian with its.
What is time?
Yes, I don't understand. But I've taken the piss before I need to piss. I don't get it. So, City on the Edge of Forever. Ian, you're number 2.
City on the Edge of Forever. I think we've said everything there is to say about it. I just want to quickly mention that the stunt double for Joan Collins died very recently. I didn't know she was still alive. She was 89 years old. Mary Statler, may have been credited as Stetler. I don't know why both names apply, but her daughter wrote on Facebook that, she was her mom's only child, and very well-respected stunt woman who helped form the Stunt Women's Association.
Cool.
Following the establishment of the Stunt Men's Association.
Cool.
And so I thought I would mention that because it was a great stunt. If you don't pull that off right, you don't buy into her death.
No, absolutely. I thought for a minute there you were going to say that her stunt double was Jackie Collins, which would have been
that
weird.
would have been interesting, but no. And then we never would have gotten all those great books.
No, we wouldn't. The stud. What a book.
But anyway, City on the Edge is both a great episode and a personal favorite. So it comes in at number 2. My number 1 is a personal favorite and a really good episode.
Same for me.
And me.
Oh,
there we go. My number 2 is the Voyager episode that I mentioned earlier. It's Relativity from season 5.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. That high?
Yeah, we watched it. It's just really fun. It's just a really fun episode, and I like the attitude to have to watching this episode is summed up by Janeway, where she's just, time travel gives me a headache. Don't think about it. I just think there's lots of really fun stuff in it. I think the twist is a good one. In terms of it's Braxton is the saboteur. I like the 3 different time periods. So you've got Voyager and Space Star right at the very start, where they're talking about, just should she hire Paris to fly the ship. Then it's 2 years later, and the attack by the Kazon, where 7 of 9 obviously isn't part of the crew yet. And then you've got the current timeline. It is using the time ship Relativity to use the time travel aspect of it. But I like the fact that they brought back Braxton from Future's End, and there were repercussions to that storyline, and that he has this intense hatred of Janeway, even though when he discovers it's him, he's like, "What? No, I don't." It's more. There's not the kind of depth in terms of story. I just think it's a really fun episode, and one that I really enjoy watching. And when I rewatched it, I realised how much I enjoyed watching it.
It's fun, yeah, but it just wouldn't have scored that highly for me.
Well, not even in your top 7.
No, good choice though. Varied, certainly more interesting than my.
City on the Edge of Forever again.
Want to take a guess? Okay, no, like that. No games. Yesterday's Enterprise is correct. It's Yesterday's Enterprise, which I have often said is my single favourite episode of Star Trek. So I couldn't not. It's a time travel episode. It's entirely predicated.
Kirk-like.
Yeah, I just love this episode, and it actually, you were saying, Ian, the thing that's remarkable about it, and mirrors something that I was saying about what was good about All Good Things, about how it's great when they all come together and it's that friend group and the crew. I love the fact that this one is one of those sort of bastard Frankenstein episodes where different writers were given each act because they
Prometheus.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was because of Denise Crosby and Whoopi Goldberg having limited windows, so they're having to rush through and get through. And the fact, I think Ira Stephen Bears was one of them, and he's commented, hasn't he, publicly, I can't remember where, at a con, I think, about how he can't believe it's so well regarded because it was such chaos and no one had any idea that it was going to cohere, and they thought it was, so they couldn't separate the episode itself from that process in terms of assessing it. And then it aired and everyone was like, wow, everyone loves this episode. But it's interesting because there's all these little sidesteps done by those writers. Like it was Ronald D. Moore who changed it to Rachel Garrett, made it a woman. And that had a profound ripple without really thinking about it. She became one of the most iconic characters and probably, I wouldn't want to overstate the causation, but led in part to Janeway as that through line of a female captain, and a strong female captain, and one who didn't necessarily have to overtly, could have been a man, and as it was originally, which is one of those the key facets of proper equity, I guess. And now it's listed everywhere, I think rightfully. The reason is, very basically, that this would be the hardest episode for me to leave out of any list where it would qualify, because it was the moment. I mean, I loved the Star Trek movies, yes, but it was watching this episode in season 3 of Next Gen, where I tipped into being a Star Trek fan, is probably how I'd put it, because it was just like, I loved it so much, and I was so moved and invested, and I genuinely think at that point in my life I would have been, I don't know, 13, 14, thought TV couldn't ever be as good as movies. And this was the first time where I was like, oh, yes, okay. And from that point on, it wasn't simply the Star Trek movies, and that's when I then went back and watched the original series. It was triggered by how good this episode was for me. So it has to top a lot of lists.
Great episode. Would have been in my list.
Ian, what's your...
All right, so this goes back to the argument. It was flip-flopping between City and this one at number 1. But just in terms of pure entertainment and fun and time travel, it's Trials and Tribulations for me.
Yeah, there we go.
I make no apologies for it, Toby. It's a terrific episode. It is inventive. It's creative. Brilliant special effects that hold up. What is it? Almost 30 years later now? It's got everything you want for fan service without it feeling overly fan servicey.
Yeah, it's not
if
pandering.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? If that makes any sense. Because it's its own entity, and it's funny and it's entertaining by itself. But when you do all of the math and the logistics and everything that it took to pull this episode off in terms of the writing of it, the acting of it, the integration, the costumes are hysterically, they're not laughable. It's not the word I'm looking for, but they make you chuckle because of how spot on they are versus what was in the 60s acceptable and typical, and how antiquated it was by the time we get some of our beloved current characters. Then you could almost do that episode again now, and it would still be another culture shock to watch it, to be honest with you.
I even love the way they do the hair on people.
Right.
It's just awesome. The slick.
Right.
In contrast, you've got Koenig with his big wig.
Right. I get a kick out of that kind of thing. It's a really fun, entertaining episode.
I think that's driven by the fish out of water aspects of the DS9 crew having to sort of work out how the original Enterprise works, how the turbo lift works, and I love the bit where Miles O'Brien is working on a piece of machinery in one of the walls in the corridors, and the engineer shows up, and the proper engineer from that timeline, and then he's trying to work out how to fix it, and Julian has to step in and say, yeah, he's suffering, let's get you back to your quarters. It's all those kind of little things as well, which are just really fantastic.
So many ways Star Trek has set the template for what we think of as fandom nowadays, and especially in terms of intellectual property fandom, meaning, franchises which are, for better or for worse, are being mined to the nth degree by the corporations that own them. A lot of the hard lifting was always done by Star Trek, going right back to the original cons, which sprung up in the fan support and the letter writing campaigns, and it's going into film and then being reborn again and then having spin-offs. But this is a case in point, because this is sadly the lesson they didn't learn was everything you just described, Ian, which is how well they did it. That's not what's learned. What a lot of people see is that this sort of episode, it sets out a template for exploring past content and things that have gone before. And it was new and playful and novel at this point in the 90s. But now it's the kind of thing which happens far too easily. And certainly it's going to be so much profoundly easier to drop people into old episodes now than you could probably do it with ChatGPT probably now, as opposed to this point when it was meticulous craft to make that happen. And it was all optically printed and composited and all that stuff, and it's quite brilliant in that way.
This came after Relics, though, didn't it?
Yes. I think so. Yeah, must have.
Because I think they built the bridge, or partially built the bridge set for Relics, which was then
only
reused.
A little bit, though. A lot of it is...
Yeah, so they only partially used...
Optical.
Built it. But then it's reused. It's reused in this episode, I think.
Yeah. But it's worth acknowledging that even though it's a fun, light episode, as you say, actually, even beyond Star Trek itself, it's had a ripple, and it's set an example of that has now been much more commonplace in terms of nostalgic, and again, not doing it well. Sometimes that member berry, that Easter egg mentality, which this is witty and clever and subtle, but now it's a more common thing. Cool. Okay then, Toby.
My number one spot, and I actually watched this episode for an upcoming episode, not for this list.
Oh.
And then I thought, it's so good. I'd forgotten how good it was and how much I enjoyed it. I moved it to this list and picked something else for the upcoming episode. So it is Deep Space Nine. It's season 3's past tense.
Past tense, I was going to say. Is that where you were going? Yeah.
I'd forgotten how good this episode was.
Yeah, it's great.
It's a great episode.
It's really good. And it's so prescient to today. And I think about what's going on in modern day America and that divide between the rich and the poor and lack of social care and treatment of the mentally ill. And I'm not just America, it's elsewhere as well. And that turning a blind eye to society's problems. It's just a very impactful episode. I wanted to highlight a few other things. I think that I want to give a shout out to some of the supporting actors. Dick Miller, favourite of mine.
Love Dick Miller.
Genre actor Bill Smitrovich and Frank Military, and also a very small guest spot for Clint Howard, returning to Star Trek since originally appearing in the Corbomite movie. It's just...
and don't forget Deborah Van Walkenburg.
Yes,
from The
also,
Warriors is also in this episode.
No, absolutely.
And it's set in 2024, isn't it?
It is. That is the scary thing. I think there are some witches working in the DS9 writing room. Yeah, absolutely. And just to add an extra, there's also it's not just grim. The storyline is just grim. There is some comedy in there as well. There's great bits with Kira and the Chief sort of traveling through different timelines, searching for... I should say that the story is that Sisko, Bashir, and Dax are thrown back in time. The actual...
Transporter accident, classic.
Yeah, the reason for it is technobabble, I should say.
Mm.
But so then Kira and the Chief are sort of travelling through different eras looking for them. There's a great bit where they meet up with some hippies. They get presented with flowers and they do the peace sign and then they beam out and they're like, wow.
I've forgotten that bit. That's really good.
But yeah, it's just a great episode and I couldn't leave it out. This wasn't even I wasn't even thinking about this episode when I drew up my list originally.
No, I know which episode. I know which episode you were doing the research for, and I think I've left it out of that. It's in the shortlist, but yeah, I can understand why.
It's up there. It's a good episode. I will be honest with you, though. You mentioned the supporting players in the episode, but the main guest star was a guy named Jim Metzler.
Mm.
And I didn't find his performance convincing enough for me to really sell that.
Spot, right.
Is he playing the businessman?
Yeah, he's Brinner. Yeah.
Right, okay.
And I thought he was okay, but that was one of those ones where kind of you needed a Joan Collins style breakout performance to really put the episode over, or Harris Yulin duet style performance that just
I don't
wowed
think
you.
That's as big an integral part of the story, though. I think the stuff that's going on within the slums is the
Sanctuary
focus of
districts.
it.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Yeah.
Sanctuary District. I agree with you, but I think it just weakened the episode for me too much for me not to not mention that it weakened
I wonder
the
if
episode.
that's part of it for me too. Meaning, because as soon as you said it, you're like, yes, yes, yes. But it is equally, for some reason, it doesn't float easily to the top.
Yeah.
I would urge you to rewatch it if you haven't rewatched it, because I was rewatching it thinking it might make my list in this other episode, and then I was just forgotten how good it is and how involved I was in that story. And I watched a lot of these episodes again, and to confirm where
But
I
you're not wrong.
ranked them.
You're not crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And this was the one that I enjoyed the most in terms of I just got into the story.
It's interesting
Is
because you
enjoyed the right word?
Yeah, well, I know it's a bit dark, isn't it? But it does provide a nice sort of, now we've done all our number ones, a nice segue into honourable mentions, because it comes up again as a callback in Little Green Men when Nog is researching
talk
Earth
about
history. And he
Bell
says,
riots.
doesn't he look like, what's the character called? What's he, the man?
Bell.
The Bell riots. Doesn't this Bell look like Captain Sisko? And of course that's in another great time travel episode, which we know of previously one of my favourite episodes of Star Trek, but for some reason the time travel doesn't feel quite as integral. I don't know. It is, of course, because they're in 1940s America. So I mean, in terms of the list of honourable mentions is potentially so massive. I mean, you can include Tapestry, Time's Arrow, first half, Times Square, as you say, Yesteryear, Assignment Earth from the original series. I mean, there's so many. The Visitor, of course, in an episode we've talked about before, Little Green Men. Time's Orphan with Molly is quite a nice time travel one. There's Future's End in Voyager that's interesting. You've got so many. Endgame, of course, we mentioned.
Funny enough, so there's an orbital track which uses a sample of Worf saying, gosh, what is it? There is the theory of the Mobius loop or the Mobius effect where time becomes a loop. And that's sampled in this orbital track where they do some really interesting things with left ear, right ear. And I thought that was in cause and effect. And I was kind of like waiting for it to pop up. And then it doesn't. And I realised, it's in Times Square.
It's funny how memory does that.
I know, yeah.
They're not hugely different in some ways. But the other thing is, the one honourable mention I did want to draw attention to, because it's actually incredibly relevant for where things sort of are now in terms of post-Picard Season 3, is Azati Prime from Enterprise, because you get the Enterprise J in that. And so we're another sort of convergent point canonically with that. And it's just always worth noting how many times time travel has been used. And it was Terra Firma. There you go. I'm flicking through my long list. Terra Firma was the Discovery episode, the two-parter with Giorgio, and the Mirror Universes past, which is just not something I care about. But yeah, so those are our favourite time travel episodes.
I got a question, and why do you think that time travel is used as a way to explore different themes and stories? What is it about travelling through time that makes a compelling story?
It's repairing things. It's preventing things. I think those are the two big elements. Fixing mistakes or trying to prevent mistakes. And no pun intended, but those are the stakes for good drama, right? Can you undo what's been done, and can you change what's going to happen in the future?
I think it allows writers to acknowledge two truths about humanity, which is the undeniable fact that things can turn on a dime and you don't know what's going to happen, and it's chance and luck and all of these things, and that small tiny moments can have deep impact across many people's lives, versus that need for destiny and fatalism and there being a grander plan, and the implication that someone from the future comes back to either interfere with, and then someone else might come back to try and fix what is the desired destiny, what should be, appeals to that side of us as a species and as a people. And also it, as we'll talk about in a future episode, it allows the allegory to be a little bit more explicit, so it becomes commentary, not just allegory. So an episode, for again, in terms of sort of that sort of thing where they don't do that and it comes across as heavy-handed, is the... You love the episode. You liked the Frank Gorshin, half black, half white.
Let that be your last battlefield.
So that is heavy-handed because they push the allegory to the nth degree. Whereas they do an equivalent sort of thing in other episodes where they time travel and they show in past tense is similar, addressing certain issues. Or on the flip side of that is Far Beyond the Stars, where they do it in a far more eloquent way. But again, that doesn't count as time travel, does it? But it could have been in some ways. But I think it examines the nature of life, memory, existence in a way which is completely impossible, but somehow resonates for us. And to some degree, the thing about the prophets and what they represent in Deep Space Nine is that truth that, especially as we age, memory is both less reliable but more recurrent, both for neurological reasons, but also for just metaphysical reasons, but in terms of wistfulness and looking back and nostalgia and all of those things. And time travel is a unique device which allows you to pick those things apart, I think.
Well, so, you say that, Rich, but actually I come from the year 2048 and I travel back to this moment to find out what your favourite Star Trek.
My God, if that is what someone chose to do,
that's a sad existence.
Yeah.
It's a very important. So this podcast is going to have a very crucial impact on the future and fate of the world. So yeah, that's why I come back to record history.
Heard of a bleaker dystopia than what you've just potentially suggested.
Ow.
Yeah, these three guys thought they were crawling up their own buttholes, but no, in fact. On that note, everybody, what are your favourite time travel Star Trek episodes? Please let us know in the comments all the details, so you can email us or interact with us on social media, or include in the description. Rate, review and share, and maybe over time, Toby's right, we'll become the Bill and Ted of podcasts and unite the world, bring world peace, and instigate the true rise of the United Federation of Planets and the utopian ideals of Gene Roddenberry.
Peace, love, and logic, everybody.
Ta-ra, bit.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Final Frontier, a Star Trek podcast with Rich Matthews, Ian Spelling and Toby Weidman. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email us on beyondffpod@gmail.com or check us out on social media. You can even join our Patreon at BFF Beyond the Final Frontier. Huge thanks go out to Alex Weidman for the brilliant original music. Please search Alex Weidman Composer on YouTube to hear the full fantastic theme and more. Also thanks goes to award-winning voiceover artist Cissy Jones for our excellent opening monologue. Find out more about her incredible work at cissyjones.com. And of course, last but not least, our brilliant artwork comes from the designer Russell Seal. Discover more of his work on behance.net/Russell Seal. Thanks again and see you next episode, Beyond the Final Frontier.